All right, Social Justice Research Project by Brian and Toby.
Our question is, should facial recognition be used in law enforcement?
31-year-old Heather Reynolds was living on the edge. One day, she finally went over the line. She stole a kettle grill, propane grill, and a shop vacuum. The total for these items was $1,233.99. Police posted pictures of Heather in the act of stealing the items in hopes that someone could recognize her. The picture of Heather was put through a search engine and it found her. The picture of her was matched because there was a picture of her tattoo on it. Heather had a very long criminal record with theft, burglary, fraud, and narcotics.
My anecdote is on a California politician named Phil Ting. In August of 2019, Phil Ting along with 28 others were misidentified as criminals while testing a facial recognition software. Even though Phil obviously wasn't going to get arrested for it, it was infuriating for him because this technology is being used in law enforcement. He believes that a tool like this shouldn't be allowed for use if it is not entirely accurate. After this incident, Phil Ting has started to push for bans and regulations on facial recognition. He and other legislators around the U.S. have had some success with their campaigns. Cities like San Francisco, Oakland, and Somerville have already placed bans on facial recognition.
Many people think that facial recognition is bad since it can be inaccurate at times. Although this is true, facial recognition is new with many problems that are to be fixed in the future. Facial recognition is a large step forward in making society better. A major problem with the facial recognition inaccuracy is that it supports racial bias. I believe that the overall outcome of facial recognition would be a positive. There are goods and bads of facial recognition, but it would eventually help society advance. Facial recognition could open a brand new way of how crime would be tackled without the hassle of bias. Many movies and TV shows portray new technology as dangerous, such as Terminator or the episode Crabboard from SpongeBob. This is very unfair at not even giving facial recognition a chance.
The controversy behind facial recognition technology is whether law enforcement should or shouldn't be allowed to use it. Facial recognition is a computer software created with the intent of identifying face through deep artificial intelligence learning processes. It is popular in law enforcement because of how quickly it can identify individuals given a large database. On the other hand, facial recognition raises questions concerning privacy and efficacy. It is a it is a threat to people's privacy because individuals' faces can be identified without consent. For example, the FBI can access private databases such as the DMV's driver's license photos. There is also the efficacy behind it, which is concern about the accuracy of this software. A 2019 review of Amazon recognition software found that almost 40% of its false matches had misidentified people with darker skin. So it seems that facial recognition has its faults but also has its upsides. Oops. I'm against the use of this technology. Facial recognition is a great advancement in technology, but I do not think that law enforcement should be allowed to use it because it infringes on privacy and isn't 100% accurate. I do not like the idea of constantly being watched and having cameras that are able to identify people's faces. According to the article, facial recognition technology represents a threat to privacy. Facial recognition Facial recognition software was used to scan everyone who attended the 2001 Super Bowl in Tampa, Florida. These people had no idea that their faces were being scanned, and something like this can happen anywhere with any camera. Did you really want public cameras scanning your faces without consent? Because I sure wouldn't. There's then the issue of it being not entirely accurate, as mentioned in my anecdote. It misidentified the California politician.
Facial recognition is very helpful at stopping crime. For example, security cameras are used to take a picture of criminals, which are put into a facial recognition program to catch criminals. This is very effective as it helps stop criminals by actually taking pictures of them or by scaring them away because of the cameras. When people think that they are being watched, they are less likely to commit crimes. Another positive about facial recognition is that it makes life easier. It speeds up the simple tasks such as shopping. A person can save their face online and the system can recommend items that they have previously bought or items that are related just by seeing the shopper's face. This is a simple and great time-saving way to go shop.
Even though facial recognition can help law enforcement make an arrest, it shouldn't be seen as sufficient evidence to convict someone of a crime. Facial recognition is not advanced enough to be reliable because it has some problems when it comes to identifying women and people of color. Facial recognition must be able to identify all races, no matter what gender, with little to no error if it even wants to be considered reliable. There's also the issue of whether this is an infringement on civil rights. Right now, there aren't really any regulations on who can use facial recognition software and how companies can use it. Having software that can identify people from a street camera or a photo found on the internet feels like an infringement on people's privacy. To make matters worse, since law enforcement in most places can be used, it is possible for you to be misidentified and falsely arrested.
I agree that facial recognition should not be used as the only evidence when convicting criminals since it can be unreliable. Facial recognition will hopefully have all of its problems removed in the future, making it more reliable. I believe facial recognition should be able to access people's lives and deny a little bit of privacy.
One of the reasons that I am opposed to facial recognition is because of how intrusive it can be on our privacy. According to using facial recognition technology will not make America safer. Systems operated by different organizations could easily be networked to cooperate in tracking an individual from place to place, whether they know the person's identity or not, and they can share whatever identities they do know. It is capable of tracking people in public and identifying their locations. What is worse is that once it identifies an individual, the person using the software has your identity and can access personal information about the individual. For example, the FBI can access the DMV database, which has information on people's addresses, age, and physical features. It doesn't feel right knowing that all this information can simply be accessed by a camera and a computer software. The second major issue with facial recognition is its possibility of misidentifying people. The software is not 100% accurate and has problems when it comes to identifying people of color and that are female. According to the article, Regulate Facial Recognition Technology Before It's Too Late, nearly 40% of the false matches were people of color, while they make up only 20% of Congress. The importance of this statistic is that it shows how inaccurate it is when it comes to identifying people of color. African Americans only make up a small portion of Congress, yet they made up a majority of the false identifications. This goes to show how inaccurate facial recognition can be when it comes to identifying minorities. When it comes to women, a study done by FBI, according to the same article, says that it got the identity of women of dark skin wrong 30% of the time. As you can see, facial recognition is flawed and is absolutely not ready to be used in law enforcement.
Although privacy is a major issue with facial recognition, I believe that it is worth it. If a person is not doing anything wrong, there should be nothing to hide. Facial recognition is still being worked on and is not perfect yet. There will be major problems such as misidentifying people, but eventually it will be fixed. It might seem that the facial recognition program is racist against blacks, but that is not true. The program looks racist because it has a hard time finding the difference between people with the same skin tone. Many people are still trying to solve this problem, but it's not known how to fix it.
You mentioned that people shouldn't be scared of facial recognition because if they are good citizens, then they should have nothing to hide. This is true, but people want to remain anonymous because facial recognition could potentially breach private information. With your identity, it is possible to find your address and date of birth by using databases such as DMV. You also agreed that facial recognition needs further development, or supports why it should not be used in its current state.
The Catechism of the Catholic Church says, second, the common good requires the social well-being and development of the group itself. Development is the epitome of all social duties. Certainly, it is the proper function of the authority to arbitrate in the name of the common good between various particular interests, but it should make accessible to each what is needed to lead a truly human life food, clothing, health, work, education, and culture, suitable information, the right to establish a family, and so on. We have to work together to see that if facial recognition is to be implemented into daily life, we have to make sure it does not get out of control. The future would benefit greatly if facial recognition was accepted. Facial recognition could pave the way for other major innovations that are to come. We could even enter a new age as technology becomes more prevalent throughout everyone's lives.
Before facial recognition is usable in law enforcement, it needs further development and regulations. I suggest that they establish regulations on who is allowed to use it and when it is allowed to be used. The technology, which is so powerful, needs to be regulated because it could potentially go out of hand. The article New Technology Reviews reveals the persistent flaws in US government says. Critics, on the other hand, argue to the contrary, that the software is often inaccurate, especially for women, transgender people, and people of color, which could open up another chapter of the United States' long history of unjust policing and surveillance. The US already has unjust policing, and this technology would worsen this terrible trend, which proves why regulations need to be made. A letter by John P. Foley on behalf of the church says, many difficult internet-related questions call for international consensus. For example, how to guarantee the privacy of law-abiding individuals and groups without keeping law enforcement and security officials from exercising surveillance over criminals and terrorists. This means the church wants us as a country to work towards protecting the privacy of those on the internet, which is what facial recognition doesn't do.
Citations and more citations. Thank you.